How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the Courage or Frights, a channel where we talk about movies and games, especially those dealing with the sci-fi, action, and horror genres. And today, I'm going to be talking about the finale for the Book of Boba Fett. So I just watched this. Despite having almost an hour runtime, actually over 61 minutes, but a Disney Plus show, like the last 6 minutes or so's credits, despite being almost an hour long, it doesn't really have much of a plot. And that's not necessarily a negative thing, because this is wrapping up the story that had been presented throughout the series. So essentially, what we have here is an almost hour long shootout between Boba Fett and his team and the Pikes. There's not much else going on here, like, to be honest, and I'm okay with that. And I think a lot of people that have a problem with this episode or will have a problem with this episode probably were thinking that it was going to branch off into something else, or they were going to bring in some other outside element that we haven't seen yet or something. But this pretty much wraps up the story that we had been told throughout this season. And despite the detour the last two episodes had, this kind of went right back into the Boba Fett side of the storyline. Of course, Mando's there. The last episode that had Luke and Ahsoka and Grogu and stuff, that has a payoff as well. The first part of the episode, of course, is them getting ready to fight the Pikes. So Boba and Fennec go to the cantina that got destroyed, and that's when they realize that, okay, we're going to war. Like, we can't let this stand. So they decide to hold up in that cantina. Boba initially wants to go back to the palace, but then the mods crew that he's got say that they can't abandon Mos Espa, so the people need their protection. So he agrees to stay there and kind of use that as his base of operations. And he sends his crew out to the different districts to watch out for the Pikes. So he sends them out to the mods go to the Aqualish neighborhood. The Gamorreans are at the Eclatunian place, and then Chrysanthemum gets sent to the Trandoshan quarters, which is just asking for trouble, but that's the way they assign their positions. And then Boba and Mando stay behind. And then while this is all happening, an X-Wing comes flying into Tatooine. And I was hoping that we weren't going to get a repeat of Mandalorian Season 2. Because I love that finale. That finale is absolutely phenomenal. But we can't just keep having Luke pop up and solve everybody's problems, because it gets ridiculous. He's got the Superman syndrome. But that's not what happens. It turns out that it's Grogu, and R2-D2 had piloted the X-Wing. So Luke had put Grogu in the ship and sent him to Tatooine to find Mando, because he had chosen the Mandalorian chainmail over Yoda's lightsaber, which kind of thought was going to happen. So I guess he's a dropout. But he still has his force powers, which will come in handy. It starts by having, I guess, Cad Bane goes to the Pikes, tells them that he killed Cobb Vanth, and that their Freetown is not going to be intervening in the situation. And then he says, I think I got a way to get Boba's attention. So he finds out earlier that the Pike Syndicate were the ones that were behind the killing of the Tusken Raiders, not the Nikto speeder bike gang, which we kind of assumed that was the case anyway. Even Fennec, I think, said or somebody said that it's unlikely that the Nikto gang was behind the killing of the Tuskens. With that information, Cad Bane goes and he personally appears to Boba Fett to draw him out, and he tells him that the Pikes were the ones that killed the Tuskens just to piss him off. And there's almost a shootout between the two of them there, but then Fennec manages to get Boba to cool down a bit and then step back inside. Around that time, it turns out that the three families, the crime syndicates or whatever, that had pledged neutrality, decide to go against their deal, and they turn on Boba and they attack all of his help that he has in different locations. So the Aqualish attack, the mods, they kill some of them. The Gamorreans, unfortunately, get pushed off a cliff by the Clatoonians, so they're dead. And Chrysanthemum gets jumped by a bunch of Trandoshans, but he manages to fight his way through. And the mods are pinned down, so Fennec goes to save them. So she manages to break them out. And then Boba and Mando are behind in the cantina. And they get swarmed by a bunch of pikes and hired guns or whatever. And the two of them come out, guns blazing. And it's a really cool sequence where we see how devastating a Mandalorian is. And, I mean, they're practically blaster-proof, so very hard to kill. Plus all the weaponry they have. The two of them are like back-to-back gunning down people left and right. They're flying all over the place with the jetpacks and stuff. Like, it's pretty cool. They almost beat them, but there's too many of them. They eventually get overwhelmed, and they're just about to be defeated by the sheer numbers of pikes when all of a sudden the speeder comes in with the Freetown people. So it turns out that Freetown did decide to get involved after Cobb got shot, which I thought was going to be the case. So actually Bane going over there and doing what he did actually inspired the townspeople to rise up and join Boba Fett's cause. So they show up, the mods get there, everybody's in the same... Chrysanthemum gets there, but he gets shot a bunch of times, so he's like hobbling over. And they're all pinned down behind this speeder. And then suddenly, when things start to go their way, these two gigantic droids appear. So these are apparently the Scorpionic assault droids or something. It's pretty much like a giant tank version of a droideka or destroyer droid. It has shields and everything. So it's basically like a destroyer droid, but huge. And they're basically impenetrable. So, like, Mando tries everything, he even tries a Darksaber, and you can't cut through the shield. So Boba Fett flies off somewhere and tells Mando to fend them off. So Mando's fighting them. He's running through the streets trying to dodge these giant droids when all of a sudden Peli, or whatever her name is, the mechanic woman, shows up in her rickshaw type thing. Mando's like, get out of here, what are you doing here? So then she sees the droid coming, she turns around and takes off. Mando hangs on the back, and then she reveals that Grogu came back and he's with them. So Mando and Grogu have their like reunion scene, and then they end up getting pinned down behind in like a doorway or something. So these giant droids are coming down on them, and then Boba shows up with the Rancor. So we get the payoff of the I want to ride the Rancor sequence. And between Grogu using the Force, the actual Rancor just using brute force, and Mando with the Darksaber and blasters and everything, they're able to finally cut down these two droids, and that's basically the turning point. Everything seems to be a lost cause for the Pikes at that point. Then Cad Bane shows up, and he has his one-on-one duel with Boba Fett. He fends off the Rancor and chases away with a flamethrower, which actually caused the Rancor to go berserk and just go on a rampage. And, you know, we'll talk about that in a second. But Boba and Cad Bane have the final showdown, and Cad Bane basically beats Boba Fett. But then he gets too cocky and he gets too close to him, and Boba is able to defeat Bane with his gaffy stick. So he returns to Tusken Raider mode, and that's how he kills Cad Bane. Presumably kills him. I mean, he stabs him right through the chest with a gaffy stick, so I would assume he's dead. Which I'm sure is going to annoy a lot of fans of the Clone Wars series. And to be honest, it was a bit fast to kill off a character as well established as Cad Bane, but I mean, it serves the story. The entire episode can be boiled down to just like a big shootout at the end of a Western, which is, you know, essentially what this was. I mean, it's like a Western or like a mafia show or something like that, and then this is the big shootout at the end. So, and that's all, it's nothing more than that, which I'm sure would annoy some people, but that's basically what they set out to do, and that's what they did. So, I mean, it is a payoff to the Boba Fett portion of the show. The Rancor goes berserk, and Actually, we get like some weird like King Kong references and stuff in there. As a huge kaiju fan who's like always loved Godzilla and King Kong and movies like that, I really like the Rancor stuff. That was pretty cool. And despite all the stuff they said about Rancors being complex creatures of emotions and stuff, we do get a Rancor just ripping up a city, pretty much. In the end, he's actually defeated by Grogu, because it turns out that Grogu has like beast taming abilities or whatever. He has a force ability to control monsters, kind of like Anakin did in Attack of the Clones with the Reek. So he's able to control and calm down the Rancor, and that pretty much ends the conflict. And then at the end we see the head of the Pikes and the various crime leaders and the mayor. So it turns out the mayor is in the city still. He's just been living with the Pikes. And we see all of them together having a meeting at the end about what to do about losing to Boba Fett. And then suddenly they're all killed quickly. And it's Fennec. So Fennec went in and she assassinated like all the crime leaders, all the crime bosses. And then at the very end, it's just Boba and Fennec walking through the streets, and you have this town that's just overjoyed with them being there and happy they saved them from the Pikes and ended the spice trade and all that kind of stuff. So we get a big happy ending. Mando flies off in his Naboo starfighter with Grogu off to Mando Season 3, no doubt. And that's basically the end. And then there's a post-credit scene, and it looks like Cobb Vanth is in the bacta tank. So apparently he is still alive. And the modder dude that saved Fennec is there. So apparently he's going to give Cobb Vanth kind of the same sort of cybernetic implants that he used to save Fennec's life. So that character is going to continue in the series, I guess. And that is the end of the Book of Boba Fett. So this episode, it doesn't get into any wider universe stuff. You don't get any more crazy cameos, which I think everybody was expecting, even though we got the Luke Skywalker thing last episode, which I think was the big crazy cameo. Yeah, so no Han Solo, no Kira, no Crimson Dawn, no any of that stuff that would have been floating around the rumor mill. But overall, I thought it was a pretty decent episode. It's not an amazing episode, but it still basically amounts to like a 50-minute long shootout with a Rancor rampage. So I can't really hate the episode. So I think I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10. So I really enjoyed the action sequence. I mean, that's all it is. It's just a big, giant action sequence. So there's nothing more you can really say about it. It doesn't do anything else plot-wise, but it's still entertaining. So that's my opinion on the finale of Book of Boba Fett. If you saw this episode, let me know your thoughts about it in the comments below. Hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, thanks for watching. See ya.